Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. The administration's efforts to secure the American border and enforce federal law are running into a surprising group of critics. American governors. The administration wants to deploy up to 4,000 National Guard troops on the Mexican border to assist Border Patrol operations. But National Guard troops are ordinarily under the control of state governors, and some of them don't like it. Oregon Governor Kate Brown says if the president asks for her Guard troops, she will refuse. Montana Governor Stephen Bullock said the same. In normal circumstances, the first duty of the military is national defense, and that begins with securing a country's frontiers. But in the U.S., that duty has been sacrificed on the altar of political gain. Martin O'Malley is the former Democratic governor of the state of Maryland. We just spoke to him. Hey, Governor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tucker.
So a question about precedent. In 2010, President Obama authorized Operation Phalanx, which sent National Guardsmen, local units, to the southwest border. President Bush did the same thing in 2006. And as I remember at the time, governors, Republican and Democrat, thanked them for the help. Why is this different?
Well, this is different for a couple of reasons, and in a way, it's not different. I mean, honestly, what I think President Obama learned by the deployment of National Guard troops in that re-election year 2010 was that it wasn't very effective, it was very expensive, and he probably could have accomplished the same ends by other means, so he did not do it again. I think the question to ask in this deployment is this really addressing an American security need, or is it political theater? And there are always, whether President Bush or President Obama or now President Trump, any use of federal troops, even National Guard troops, within the continental United States has to pass certain tests that we have put into national law that prohibits the use of federal troops for law enforcement purposes.
So I mean, I understand. I just want to make sure I understand this. So you're saying that Democratic governors in Oregon, for example, and Montana have done a cost analysis of this, and they're just against wasting federal money. Part of them dies when they see federal dollars going to waste. That's the objection?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, I'm not sure which governors are saying this is a good idea and which is not. All I know is that when it was done under President Obama in 2010, in hindsight, I think most everybody agreed it was a wasteful use of dollars and it was not necessary. Now, there probably will be some governors who might find that they are very supportive in, the incumbent governor of Arizona or someplace in using their own National Guard there within their state to support federal, protection of the border. I'm not saying it can't be done, but what I'm saying is that when it was done in the past, it was found to be ineffective, wasteful, and many people observed that it was a step or two too close to violating the principles of the Posse Comitatus Act, which says that we should never allow federal troops if we can avoid it, to be used for law enforcement purposes.
Right, but there have been plenty of cases. I mean, from Little Rock in 1957 to the University of Mississippi, I think in 61. There have been Washington, D.C. in 68, April, 50 years ago this month. Right. Federal troops were used because, there was a law enforcement crisis. I think you can make the case
Hurricane Katrina.
Hurricane Katrina. I was there for that.
After the collapse of civilian things. Yeah, it's right there. It's. I served as the co-chair of the Council of Governors, and that was created by an act of Congress to meet quarterly with the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of Homeland Security to work out these issues. Each of those examples you give, Tucker, are indeed, important historic precedents, all of which have to do with making sure that we don't use federal troops for law enforcement purposes within the United States, a longstanding principle from this republic's founding.
Right, but this wouldn't be, of course, this would be
cared deeply about.
Right, but none of that is real, as you know. This has to do with support that the Democratic Party now has affirmatively for illegal immigration. They don't want any steps taken, meaningful ones, to stop it. They don't acknowledge it's a problem. These are new positions for the Democratic Party. Bill Clinton did not hold these views. Hillary Clinton didn't hold these views 2 years ago. But if you're honest, you got to acknowledge that the views of the party have changed.
And you've forgotten that litany to mention that President Obama probably deported and interned immigrants than any president ahead
That's
of
true.
them. So
Exactly.
I don't accept your premise with respect. I don't accept your premise that the Democratic Party is in favor of illegal immigration, flooding the country with drugs, or bringing in rapists or murderers.
No. But actually, that's not. I don't think they're for flooding the country with drugs or rapists or anything like that. You're overstating it. I do think they're opposed to any meaningful attempt to stopping the inflow of illegal immigration into America. And I think it's actually very hard for Democrats right now to concede that 11 million illegals in your country is a problem. Do you think it's a problem?
I don't believe that the level of immigration, even sum total, is much greater than it's been at other times in our nation's history. And in fact, border crossing in Mexico, as you know, Tucker, border crossings in Mexico are at about a 46-year low.
That's untrue. That's untrue. Oh, I'm sorry. You unveiled the fake statistic in the wrong form. No. Actually, apprehensions of illegal immigrants are up 3 times this month over this month last year. So, in fact, they're up.
Yes, but overall border crossings are down.
I'm talking about the apprehension of illegal aliens into this country. But my question is a really simple one.
Let's give Donald Trump victory. Let's tell Donald Trump everything he's done to make America
but see, that's a distraction.
An unwelcoming place for immigrants has worked. Border crossings are at a 46-year low.
Okay, the question is, we have 11 million illegal aliens, at least in this country, right now.
Right.
Do you think that's bad?
We need to do something about it.
Right. Do you think when you say something, anything short of giving them citizenship and voting rights, like sending them home, would that be acceptable to you?
Well, I think some of them probably should be home, sent so-called home, but the vast majority of them probably should not be. They should be given a pathway to citizenship, and we should engage in comprehensive immigration reform, as we have in other periods in our nation's history. And realize
11 million is a lot of people. What percentage do you think ought to be given citizenship?
Look, I think certainly anybody that's a serious threat to public safety. I mean, I think that they should be returned and deported. And in fact, that's what we have been doing as a country for some time. But I think the vast majority of those 11 million people, Tucker, we're not going to be transporting or deporting them home. I mean, maybe
so you just made my case for me.
Maybe some will go home.
Right, maybe some will go.
Which aspect of your case? I'm glad to be helpful.
My case that previous Democratic presidents, including Bill Clinton, said it is a prima facie problem to have 11 million people here illegally. We should stop the inflow, and we should make them leave because we didn't admit them in the first place. And that used to be the position of the Democratic Party.
I'm not sure that the make them all leave thing is something that you can say is a realistic policy, would be cost effective, or would ultimately be good for our nation, especially if many of those people are kids that have only known the United States as the only country in their memory.
I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying you're making my point that the position has changed of the party, and I just like a reality check once in a while to acknowledge that. Governor, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker. Land of the free, home of the brave.
Dan Bongino is NRA TV contributor and a former Secret Service agent. He joins us tonight. So, Dan, this story, I think, is interesting for a bunch of reasons. One, it suggests that the country is breaking apart in some meaningful way because governors and officials on the West Coast are refusing to acknowledge federal authority. That's a big deal. But the deeper question arises, what's the purpose of having law enforcement or armed forces if not to protect your own country?
Yeah, there isn't. And, there were some interesting sound bites in that interview with Governor O'Malley there. Did you notice, Tucker, when you asked him about the 2010 deployment of the National Guard by Barack Obama, he never really answered the question.
No.
Tucker, that was entirely uncontroversial at the time. Republican governors understood that due to the threat of narco trafficking and the fact that terrorists do in fact know we have a very porous southern border, that this is unquestionably a national security issue, if not a top 2 or 3 national security issue. This is a pure political play by these governors, Tucker. They are pandering to an increasingly radical leftist base that's lost their mind on immigration. It is no more difficult than that to understand.
But if you've got 60,000 Americans or more dying every year of drug ODs, a lot of them from fentanyl, much of which comes over the Mexican border, I mean, at minimum, tens of thousands of American citizens dying from this. This isn't marijuana. It's the most powerful synthetic opiate ever devised, and it's killing like an entire demographic. So, like, why is that not an emergency? I'm honestly confused.
No, I'm ecstatic you brought this up because this is a common trick the liberals pull on us. They talk about illegal immigration as if it's a victimless crime, Tucker. And they also talk about it. Notice how they talk about it almost exclusively in terms of the effect on the person who broke the law. Exactly. Oh, what are we going to do? They're here. Oh, my gosh, they were looking for work. Okay, I get it. Point stipulated. Many of them are looking for work. Some of them aren't. Some of them are here to traffic in sex trafficking, in drugs, to traffic in weapons. As I said, terrorists are well aware of the porous border. This is not a victimless crime. Not to mention, Tucker, what about the American people? What about the taxpayers who have to fund this? We're $20 trillion in debt, and we're funding, social programs that are benefiting people that basically came into the country and said, laws, schmalaws, I'm not interested. I'll do my own thing.
But why is it the same people who are telling us it's immoral to defend our own borders, and this is a left and right thing, this is Lindsey Graham and a lot of Democrats are telling us you're not allowed to defend your own borders, but you must send your sons to defend the borders of Syria. Why are the same people who are against stopping illegal immigration for more wars abroad? It's an interesting mix, isn't it?
It is. It's actually a very dangerous mix because what you get is, and listen, I'm a free market libertarian. But I'm a free market libertarian for a set of common rules we all live by. You know, I always think of this story, this Ecuadorian painter who came here legally. He was painting my house in Maryland. He was the most anti-illegal immigration guy I ever met. You know why? He was being put out of business by illegal immigrants who were coming into Maryland, into that market, and undercutting his costs. He's like, why did I bother following the rules? I could have just done it illegally and got the same darn thing.
Right. And, of course, the cost to people like that is really high because this whole mess, our unwillingness to restrain immigration in any way or be sensible about it, discredits immigrants, many of whom are like great people and really do add to the country. So how do you think they feel about this? The people who stood in line to get here because they really believed in America.
My wife is one of them. It was a long process, Tucker. It took a long time. It took us a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort to do it the right way. People should have some respect and understand that waiting in line matters, and that flag should mean something to them. And by disrespecting it, you've shown us it means nothing.
That's absolutely right. Thanks, Dan. Dan Bongino back at the end of the hour to respond to Michelle Obama's new comments. Will she run for president? She answers that, actually, and Dan's thought it through. That's ahead. But next, people who run Washington insist, they tell us every day, that Russia is our greatest enemy and must be fought at every turn. But they don't feel that way about China. Why is that? Here's a hint, because they're getting rich from China. That's why. We've got details coming up. For more than a year now, our cultural and political leaders have been telling us that Russia is the greatest threat we face. They say that relentlessly every day and in every forum. Whole channels are devoted to this message. Russia hacked our election. We must fight back with sanctions. We must expel their diplomats. We must fight them. We've done all of those things. In recent months, for example, we've killed hundreds of Russian citizens in Syria. Feel safer yet? Probably not. By now, you likely understand that the Russia story is fundamentally dishonest. It is propaganda, just like most things our elites tell us. Russia is not the biggest threat to this country, not even close. China is. Our elites never say that because they're getting rich from China, and they're on China's side. 17 years ago, we welcomed China into the World Trade Organization. China's entry was supposed to strengthen the American economy and encourage China to become more free. Neither happened. Instead, millions of American jobs disappeared disproportionately from our middle class. China routinely ignores WTO rules to wage economic war against us. Our trade deficit has exploded. And, of course, China has not become a free country. It's become more authoritarian. And why wouldn't it become more authoritarian? Our elites do not push back because they don't care about democracy. They're fine with dictatorship as long as they're profiting from it. Democracy, after all, is what brought them Brexit and Donald Trump, and they're not for that. Just this very morning, former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright accused the Trump administration of abetting, quote, the resurrection of fascism. Huh, really? How exactly are they doing that? Is the White House, I don't know, sucking up to the fascist leaders of America's main military and economic rival? Nope. Madeleine Albright's doing that, though. She can barely stop praising the Chinese dictatorship. In 2013, Albright said this about the unelected leader of China, Xi Jinping, quote, he has shown a deep interest not only in building stronger ties with the United States, but with our country itself. Barf. If you think that's embarrassing, though, how about this one? Quote, he appeared to be very much attuned to the needs of his domestic constituents. Those constituents, by the way, can go to jail for criticizing him. 3 years later, Albright described China's entry into the WTO as a success, presumably for China. She said the U.S. and China could cooperate on cyber issues, totally ignoring the fact that China is by far the biggest hacker of U.S. secrets, military and industrial secrets. Yes, even bigger than Russia. After all that slobbering, you will not be surprised to learn that Madeleine Albright's company has a huge presence in China. She knows exactly who's paying the bills. Most of our elites do. That's why they denounce America as fascist while describing China as remarkable or emerging, a success story. And for them it is. But for the rest of us, China is a looming threat. China has dramatically increased its defense spending recently, and that's not just for self-defense. While Madeleine Albright was getting rich from flattering dictators, the Chinese military has spread its reach around the world. The military of China just opened its first overseas military base, which is along key shipping lanes in the Horn of Africa in Djibouti. China has now more than 350,000 students studying in this country, and according to our FBI director, Christopher Wray, many of them are spies for the Chinese government. They're assisted in that by about 100 China-funded Confucius Institutes, which operate freely on U.S. university campuses, but in fact function as sources of Chinese propaganda. At home, China's government imposes tyranny on its people. For example, they just banned online sales of the Bible this week. Their censorship online is legendary. But the censorship extends also to this country, amazingly enough, and nobody ever mentions it. American movies, for example. They're altered to avoid offending the Chinese government, which can, in effect, block their release. An American employee at Marriott was fired recently after he liked a tweet that referred to Tibet as a separate country. China didn't like that, so Marriott canned him. Mercedes-Benz, the car maker, they just apologized to the Chinese government for featuring the Dalai Lama in an ad. Chinese government doesn't like the Dalai Lama, and that's why universities around the world are increasingly wary of inviting him to speak. They don't want to offend the Chinese. China, to remind you, is a fascist country, so you'd think it would be a global pariah, right? Our elites would hate it. Our blue states would block travel to China the way they block travel to North Carolina over its bathroom policies. Of course they don't do that. California Governor Jerry Brown just went to China last year and nobody cared. Google, biggest company, most powerful company in the world, massively expanding its artificial intelligence operations in China, even though that will almost certainly empower the Chinese military. But don't pay attention. Ignore all of that. Avert your gaze because remember, Russia is the real threat. And if you disagree with that, you obviously work for Putin. Harry Kazianis is Director of Defense Studies at the Center for the National Interest. He joins us tonight. Harry, put this, you never hear anybody say this, but let's be as honest as we can be, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I mean, Russia is not a threat at all compared to the threat posed by China. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, just look at the numbers for a second. Russian economy worth $1.4 trillion. Not small, but not a superpower. Chinese economy, $11 trillion. If you actually look at purchasing power parity, China is actually a bigger economic superpower than the United States. So if you just look at the raw numbers, the Chinese are much more, in terms of just the scale, a much bigger challenge for the United States. So, you know, look, Russia's a problem. Russia's a strategic competitor. But China, if you put everything together, China's an enemy.
Which country is expanding more aggressively its military presence around the world, China or Russia?
Oh, China, by far. I mean, even if you just look in East Asia for a moment, not even looking globally, the Chinese want to dominate the South China Sea, where you've got $5 trillion of shipping goods that are actually moving through that. That would allow the Chinese to dominate all of East Asia. They want to subjugate Taiwan, a democracy with 25 million people. They want to dominate the East China Sea. And they're building out all of their military in Asia to do this. And they're actually developing certain missiles to target our aircraft carriers. So the threat is very real when it comes to China.
So which country, Russia or China, has hacked more information networks than the United States?
I think this is a trick question. It's China. The Chinese, for example, have hacked pretty much every military industrial thing that we use to project military power. The F-35 worth over $1 trillion, the F-22, the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, the V-22 Osprey, all of that is worth probably trillions of dollars. But also when you factor in things like AI, other things that they're trying to hack into, they essentially could become a superpower by just stealing all of this stuff off us.
And they're doing that. So my final question, given everything you just said, which is all true, if you really cared about the United States, you'd be way more concerned about China than Russia. Our elites are not. So here's the final question. Do more people in Washington get rich representing or working for Russia or China?
China, obviously. But Tucker,
I don't know if it's obvious to our viewers. I don't think, because the impression over the last year and a half has been everyone in D.C. is working for Russia. Some are. But as compared to the number like Madeleine Albright, who are doing business with China, much smaller number, correct?
Yeah, and look, obviously the threat is China. And you know what, Tucker, this has been something that's building since 1991. Remember, the reason that the United States and China became friendly was because of the fall of the Soviet Union.
Right.
When the Soviet Union went to the scrap heap of history, there was going to be a strategic rivalry. Now that's been was put aside because of trade relations. We have a $650 billion trade relationship with China, but the American people are rightly questioning that, and obviously that's creating strategic rivalry, and that makes sense.
But don't you think somebody in authority, maybe a former Secretary of State like Madeleine Albright, a self-described genius, ought to be sounding the alarm about this, rather than distracting our attention with dumb fake story after dumb fake story about a non-existent threat from Russia?
Well, you know what? I think the problem is there's really, when you boil down to it, there's a strategic awakening that's happening here. I think when you boil everything together, when you take China hacking into the OPM, stealing all our military industrial prowess, people are waking up to this, and it's the American people that are asking these questions. And I think Donald Trump is one of the people who's finally awakened all of us to this challenge. And when you put all of these things together, China pushing in the South China Sea, Taiwan, East China Sea, I think people are starting to get that the real threat is not Russia, it is in fact China. It's the threat of our time.
There are a lot of things to criticize about Trump, but on this and a couple other core issues, he's absolutely right, and they hate him for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. I'm sorry to say that. I'm not flacking for Trump. I'm just acknowledging reality because I care about America.
Absolutely.
Harry, thank you for that.
Thank you.
We've got a Fox News alert for you. As that segment was in progress, Defense Secretary James Mattis has signed orders tonight deploying up to 4,000 National Guard troops to the Mexican border. The Texas National Guard already has begun deploying 150 troops. Arizona has ordered up 250. There will be more, and we'll continue to follow the story, obviously, as it develops. The Trump administration says it plans to roll back an Obama-era policy that made schools more dangerous and has led to some of the tragedies we've recently covered. We'll give you details next. You may have noticed that American schools seem increasingly dysfunctional, many of them. Some are getting more dangerous. But you may not know that a federal policy is part of the reason. Several years ago, the Obama administration ordered schools to eliminate racial gaps in school discipline. They didn't say how to do this. It was like the old Soviet potato harvest. Just do it. Get the numbers up. And so schools complied in many cases simply by cutting back on discipline itself. The result, fewer students were suspended. On the other hand, schools across the country have seen fighting in the hallways and disorder in the classroom. That's real. Now, the Trump administration reportedly is planning to scrap that Obama-era rule. Heather McDonald is one of the people who's been following this from the very beginning. She's at the Manhattan Institute. She's a fellow and the author of the book, The War on Cops, and joins us tonight. Heather, thanks for coming on. This is one of those policies that got a little bit of attention, but people didn't focus on it until the Parkland shooting, and it seemed implicated in that. Tell us what this did, this policy.
Well, it penalized schools that had disparate rates of school discipline on the theory that the only possible reason why black students may be suspended at higher rates than white students is teacher bias. And so schools were warned by the Obama administration that they would lose federal funding. They were taken to court unless they got their suspension and expulsion rates down. And so, as you say, Tucker, schools simply stopped imposing completely legitimate consequences on very serious forms of school disorder. Now, the premise underlying this Obama policy was completely false. It assumes, without even trying to prove, that there can be no behavioral disparities between black and white students. Well, if you look at crime rates, if you look at the fact that black males between the ages of 14 and 17 commit homicide at 10 times the rate of white and Hispanic male teens combined, it's not surprising that in the classroom, the same lack of socialization that leads to those wildly disproportionate rates of violent crime is also affecting student behavior. And we should be concerned about that behavior, try to get at its root causes, and not blame teachers for the completely phantom, specious idea that they're racist.
Well, that's kind of exactly the point. One, this was not a science-based conclusion. It was purely ideological and not rooted in reality at all. Two, it doesn't help anybody to say, just change the numbers and ignore the root causes. Why did teachers' unions, teachers were, as you said, effectively blamed for this. Yes. Why didn't they fight back?
It's very curious. In some places they have. In Seattle they have. I believe in St. Paul. I think teachers are completely torn. I mean, this is another reason why it's so ludicrous to blame them for racism. Teacher ed schools are one long marinade in white privilege theory. There's no more liberal group of professionals in the country than teachers. And so they want to, in a sense, believe in their own white privilege, and yet they will not speak out against the consequences of this. You have a reign of assaults against teachers in this country. In Buffalo, New York, a teacher was kicked in his head by students who said, "We can't be suspended." Students know what the new rules are, and they are taking advantage of it.
That's just horrifying. And finally, did anybody, I mean, like so many social policies, they kind of take place sub rosa and the rest of us don't really notice. Did anyone complain about this at the time? It's so prima facie crazy, you'd think someone would. Did anyone?
Well, there's a very brave black teacher in St. Paul, Aaron Benner, who opposed as strongly as he could the very left-wing radical policies of the St. Paul School District and said, I am not helping my black students by winking at their school violence, because you know what's going to happen. They're going to end up raping or murdering somebody, and they'll end up in prison. And he basically had to leave his school for speaking truth to power.
It's grotesque, because you're exactly right. It does no service to the kids themselves. Heather, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. That was amazing. Up next, the latest installment of our Tech Tyranny series, the last of the week, but not the last we're going to do. Question tonight, why is Facebook trying to gain access to your medical records? After that, Dan Bongino returns, responding to Michelle Obama's comments today. She is back in the political conversation. We'll have that. Records from several U.S. hospitals for unknown research purposes, but I'm sure they were fine. Of course, not just Facebook will get that information. Today, the company admitted that most of its 2 billion users, have had their personal information taken by unnamed malicious actors, whatever that means, but it's not good. Beverly Hallberg is the president of District Media Group, and she joins us tonight. Beverly, how... I think most people believe that medical information is sacrosanct, is protected by HIPAA laws. I can't get my kids if I want to. How would Facebook go about getting them?
They even make you sign a document every time you go in, it seems like.
That's
they
right.
want to make sure that everything is protected. I'm not sure how they plan to skirt around this, and that's what I think what is so scary about this. I know that most of us expect when we put something on Facebook, our age, our zip code, whatever information you provide, we expect that to be out there. But to have Facebook going to medical professionals, hospitals, doctors, trying to find information on you, I'm not sure how that's even allowed. And the only thing I can think of is that since they were claiming it was anonymous, you don't have to put a name to the medical record, that somehow that was allowed. But what medical professionals need to know is that Facebook knows how to find out who this person is. They can easily attach any type of medical record to what they already know about you on Facebook.
Wow. Maybe the answer is they paid off Congress, just throwing that out there. So this amount of personal information must be incredibly valuable, which is, of course, the whole point of Facebook, is to make money for its billionaire founders.
And there's nothing wrong with wanting to sell ads. That's how Facebook makes its money. We wouldn't use it for free if they didn't. Do you have to move to virtual advertising, because TV isn't quite the same as it used to in traditional advertising. But we are talking about a company that is seeking out information you never said they could have. So when you think even about your phone, let's say you went to a hospital. If you had Facebook open on that, they would know you were there. Think about GPS locators on their phone. They know how to even find out which hospital you were at in order to connect the data that the hospital may have given to you to what you currently have on your phone. So this is extremely damaging. Even think about what doctors ask you. They even ask you if you own guns. Think about the medical information that doctors have that could be used to discriminate against individuals. It could be used for blackmail. This is extremely concerning that Facebook would even want to seek this out, because if this is also hacked, what do we do if this information is hacked and is out there? And we're talking about Facebook, which is a global entity. What happens when people's medical information is out there? I think information is good to connect, but information like this can also destroy people.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's terrifying, and it also gives enormous, unprecedented amounts of power to the company that holds that information. Are you ever aware of any meaningful attempts to regulate this?
Well, I think government's going to try to regulate it. We know Mark Zuckerberg is going to go before Congress on Wednesday. He's going to be testifying. But I think what's concerning about this is that I worry that there's going to be this overcorrection and think that government needs to regulate everything. But let's not forget there was the data breach with OPM. I don't think government is the solution for figuring out how to protect people's data. What we're seeing with Facebook is we have such a large central information of data, just one hack. You're talking about people's information globally. I am not sure exactly what the answer is to protect ourselves. I think we have to do individually have to protect ourselves. But I think Facebook is having a wake-up call right now with Cambridge Analytica, with these medical records coming out. I think there's a big push on them to say, hey, there's the data that individuals willingly provide to use your platform, but you can't go and seek out other information.
Well, I'd at least like to know what it is. I mean, Hershey's can put, kind of whatever they want in a candy bar as long as it's not poisonous, but they have to tell you what they put in there. And Facebook doesn't have to tell you what they have, and they should. It was great to see you. Thank you, Beverly. Well, just a year ago, the mayor of London boasted that his city was the safest in the world. That's not true at all anymore. It's getting more dangerous by the day. Why is that? Katie Hopkins joins us next. After several fatal terror attacks hit London last year, the mayor of that city, Sadiq Khan, who is a demagogue, tried to placate his critics by saying that overall, London is the world's safest city. Watch.
London is the safest global city in the world and one of the safest cities in the world. But we are a very safe city.
That was false then. It's ridiculous now. A wave of stabbings have given London a higher murder rate than New York City, which is much bigger. On Thursday, 6 teenagers were stabbed in London in 4 separate incidents over just 90 minutes. Why is this happening? Why is it accelerating? Katie Hopkins, a lifelong resident of the UK, a columnist at The Rebel, author of Rude, joins us now with an explanation. Katie, what's going on in London?
Doesn't it just make your skin crawl to hear that London mayor still trotting out? And just 2 days ago, the same lines, London is one of the safest cities. And if you go amongst London right now and talk to regular people in Britain, they wouldn't dream of taking their young people to London because we now have a higher murder rate than New York. We have a major problem with black gangs in different areas of London, in different postcode, zip code regions. Black gangs, rival black gangs, are killing each other. And that figure you mentioned, 6 in 24 hours, it actually went up to 9 stabbings yesterday. And for every stabbing carried out by one tribe, one gang, that will be revenge. There will be vengeance for that. So it's a perpetuating crime level, and it's a crime wave we're going to see rising. And it's a serious problem here in London that the mayor and the head of the Met won't talk about it because it involves young black men and they're too afraid of being called racist.
Well, that's it right there. I mean, London has had crime problems in centuries past at various points. But what's changed is the unwillingness of the people in charge to acknowledge it and their willingness instead to lie about it and punish anyone else who doesn't lie about it. So when he says the lie that London is the safest global city, how do people respond in London? Do they kind of nod in a bovine way? Oh, yeah, of course it is.
No, absolutely not. In fact, there's quite a campaign and it's building now to get Sadiq Khan out. And I see myself as the cheerleaders of that campaign, of course. Frankly, if little Sadiq Khan could take off his ballet shoes and his tutu and stop dancing around the issue and address the problem head on, we have a problem with black gangs in London. These are a syndicated crime gangs in different areas attacking each other. We need to do profiling of the attackers, then we need to quadruple our stop and search efforts. He got into power saying he would do his best to stop and search because it unfairly targeted young black men. Well, I say tough luck. If young black men are the guys mostly committing this crime, then young black men can expect to be stopped and searched. And frankly, if it was white conservative women doing the stabbing, I'd be very happy to be searched every day if it saved a life. But this lot are so politically correct They are prepared to let London fall, let young boys die on the street, slaughtered every night here, because they don't want to be called racist. And I think that's a sickening state of affairs here in the UK.
But it's a very recognizable theme for us over here. Katie Hopkins, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Good luck with that campaign.
Thank you, Tucker.
Michelle Obama says her husband was a strong president because he made America eat carrots. Did you eat your carrots during the Obama years? Dan Bongino joins us in a minute to reveal whether he did. Stay tuned. Michelle Obama says her husband was a way better president than Donald Trump because, among other reasons, he made America eat its carrots, or something to that effect. Watch.
The 8 years that Barack was president, it was sort of like having the good parent at home, the one that told you to eat your carrots and go to bed on time. And now perhaps we have the other parent. Maybe it feels fun to some for now because we can eat candy all day and, you know, stay up late and not follow the rules.
Dan Bongino joins us to assess the sanctimony on parade. So when they brought interest rates down to zero, shafting middle-class savers because it was easier, was that an example of eating your carrots?
Yeah, the massive quantitative easing program that enriches investors and people with assets and decimates working class families. Yeah, terrific, Tucker. You know what's really offensive, I mean really grotesquely offensive about that statement? Follow the rules, insinuating what? That Barack Obama was a rule follower? Let me tell you something. In my history with the Secret Service and international security for 12 years, you know what one of the rules was, Tucker? You don't leave your people behind to die in a foreign country when the embassy or special mission complex is under attack. You know what else is another one of the rules? When you're an IRS special agent with 1811 law enforcement authority, you don't go and target conservative groups out there with a weaponized IRS. You know, here's one more doozy for you. Let me give you another rule. When you're an executive branch official, no less the president in charge of it, you don't go out and usurp authority that is not yours on immigration by claiming prosecutorial discretion on people who cross the border illegally. Those are just a few rules Barack Obama just said.
Can you think? So the idea is, you know, we were brave and we told the truth even when it was unpopular. Can you think of a single example, and I can, I watched carefully for 8 years, where Obama or his wife said anything that would be unpopular in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, or Washington, D.C., or Los Angeles? I mean, they seem to just read from the script of their friends. Did they ever challenge conventional wisdom on anything?
You know, no. You know, let me, to be fair, let me do one. There was one time I heard him give a speech about Vietnam veterans, and I thought it was a good speech. And he basically gave no safe harbor to people who had attacked our Vietnam veterans. You know, the Democrat Party had, and that was, but other than that, Tucker, he was a fake on taxes. He was awful on health care. He expanded the administrative state. He invented a bunch of presidential authority he didn't have. And I say with no reservations, he was the worst president in my lifetime. I'm 43 years old. Absolutely no doubt about that on any metric.
I wonder if he invited Al Sharpton over to the White House 70-odd times as a policy advisor. I wonder if he and his wife ever think, you know, we left this country so desperate and unhappy that they elected Donald Trump to secede us. I wonder, I mean, that's like kind of an obvious conclusion. Has it ever occurred to them?
No. And Tucker, what's even worse about the Obama presidency, the constituencies he claimed to be a champion of, the poor, the working man, black people in middle income and lower income communities in the inner cities, were left far worse off by Barack Obama. Tucker, income inequality got worse under the Barack Obama era. Black unemployment, inner cities, we saw rioting in inner cities. Black unemployment was through the roof. These were the groups he claimed to want to defend. No, he left just about everybody worse off. You know, even racial discord in the United States, by just about every available measure, got worse. That's the legacy of the Obama presidency.
Well, when Al Sharpton's your policy advisor, that tends to happen. I always forget, and my producer just reminded me in my ear, that you protected President Obama. I mean, you were on his detail. I've seen pictures of it. How do you feel? I mean, I don't even know what to ask you. What do you remember about that? Or what does this, her quote, evoke in you?
You know, The worst part about it for me personally is he was a nice guy to me personally. Yeah. And I know you feel it's not personal to me. Politics isn't. This is the business of running the country. And so was his wife. They were always very pleasant to be around. They never gave us a hard time. And he was a gentleman. But you know what? A lot of people are gentlemen. And that's great. But that doesn't make you an effective president of the United States, Tucker. He hurt my wallet. He hurt my health care. He hurt my business. And, that's why I left. I couldn't take it.
He hurts the country. But I'm still glad he was nice. Yeah. That actually does count to me. Dan, thank you for that. As always, great to see you. That's it for us. Tune in every night at 8 to the show that's a sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Good night from Washington. I bet Sean Hannity has a fantastic